Well, hello everybody. My name is Karin Rigsby, and as I was introduced, I come from Sweden. And I'm not going to show any pictures. What you see is what you get. And I'm here on behalf of STPKC and Kenneth, who unfortunately couldn't join us today. But I'll tell you, I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner. I drive my own businesses in management consulting, helping businesses doing better, but also I'm part owner of a company in the transport and industrial safety business. And there have been a lot of obstacles coming to innovation. So I really know the need of this model as well. I come from the region of Dalarna, which is set in the central Sweden. The capital of the region is Falun, and that's approximately 2.5 hours from Stockholm. And there aren't many people living there, if you compare to a lot of other areas in Europe. 250,000 people, and from the northwestern part until the southeastern part is approximately 400 or 500 kilometers. And the largest, which I wouldn't call cities, someone asked me what city I came from, but there are two towns, I could say, larger towns in the area. Some 60,000 people there each. And then there are a lot of smaller towns and villages around. So it's a very rural area. And it consists of 15 municipalities, some larger, some smaller, obviously. And I've been engaged in business and entrepreneurship for quite a long time, because I'm also very much involved with the Federation of Small Enterprises in Sweden, which is called Företagarna. I'm actually the local chairman in Falun, and also the chairwoman of Dalarna, and also involved in making it better to run businesses in Sweden. So I know this from the entrepreneur perspective. In Dalarna we have a joint organization, a regional organization, which consists of the 50 municipalities in Dalarna. And of course they, just like all other regions, have formed a strategy which rests on the Europe 2020, the EU strategy, which is of course then called the Dalarna strategy. And this strategy lists the reasons for regional growth and how to lead it, how to coordinate it. And the challenges to handle is just like everywhere else, of course. It's competence, it's the ability to change and to compete, accessibility and infrastructure, and also the attraction of the region. And this is then a region that is slowly decreasing when it comes to inhabitants. So we have a lot of challenges there as well. And even though we work a lot with innovations in the region, and we have a college and also a lot of businesses, there is quite a vast gap between innovation, education, higher education and SMEs. And this is really a cultural issue, because the tradition is that you look upon the region as having a lot of large industries, even though this is not true. Preferably we say, well, it's in forestry, pulp and paper, and steel. For instance, we have the largest machine for making newspaper paper situated in our region. So, of course, when you talk about business, you often think of the large ones. Though one of our largest industries is actually tourism. And the interesting thing was, a few years ago I said, well, that's one of our largest export industries. And somebody said, no, tourism, that does have anything to do with export. And I said, well, it's the transfer of money. It doesn't have to do with whether I travel or whether I send something and do something. It's actually money being transferred. So that's also an interesting point of view. And there are a lot of both larger and smaller businesses obviously in this area as well. And in the context that over the past 20 years, 4 out of 5 jobs have been created in the companies that have less than 50 employees. It says for itself, but most of the jobs have been actually created in really, really small companies, obviously. So that's how sort of the culture look on, still a lot of have that look that it's, well, the most of these big organizations. When we talk about companies in Dalarna, they often talk about the large ones, even though, of course, the amount of the small one is really vast. And innovation has been viewed upon often as something really high tech. There is an incubator working with this, but they really mostly attracted when it's really technical and really high-end stuff. The day-to-day innovations, which would benefit to the small companies, they don't view those as interesting, of course, because they get their funding for certain areas and they have to project in certain areas as well. And at the same time, in higher education, it's often been seen as showing that, well, we've got all these different areas that we can offer, and we welcome students from other parts, but we often forget that what is the regional need? What do the SMEs in our region actually need when it comes to education and knowledge? So it isn't at all in accordance with the regional demand. Thus, there is a substantial gap between the organizations that are facilitating innovation, the educational system, and the SMEs. And in this view, there really is a need for some approach in Dalarna to actually more find these a way of actually matching the educational system within innovational organizations and the SMEs. And this is then the way you have to do it. I think it was also presented a bit in the past presentation, is that you have to look from the SMEs' point of view, of their perspective, especially the ones that have less than 10 employees. The former speaker said, well, they probably are engaged, even the management is engaged, or the manager is engaged with talking to clients. Oh yes, that's what they have to do, because everybody's engaged in what you're doing now, in the operational part of they don't have time for strategy thinking. And that's why you need the help. And even though innovations should, of course, I think should start with the SME perspective, but they don't always know what they really need. They think they know. But it's like for us as well, if we don't know what's happening around us, how can we then know what we really need? So there has to be an interaction. And I think an approach that you could look at an outside and in perspective at this would be the right way of doing it, in Dalarna anyway. And there are certain target groups in our area that this would be really interesting for. Of course, we need the SMEs to really understand and be committed, especially the ones with 1 to 9 employees. And we also need the vocational and adult education area, and also regional development stakeholders. They're very important in this as well, obviously. And we have a lot of different organizations working with these kind of questions and issues, but you have to find them to work together more closely, and at the same time understanding not only the needs of the SMEs, but also the conditions under which they are working. That I think is really, really important. So what I can see is that the innovation management model is really, really interesting here for us in our region to use, to improve the conditions for the SMEs in our region. I think that is really the right way of doing it. And we also have to, at the same time, make our own community aware that innovations aren't just high tech. Innovations is something else, and to realize that we need the right education and right competence in the companies to see that often the easiest solutions sometimes are the best. And it's always time to market, because that's the important thing. You can't develop forever, but instead you have, because that's the problem often in the incubators, that you develop and you develop, and you're further and further away from the market, whereas you really have to know it's time now to get out in the market. So that's what really I would want to tell you about what we wish to do in our region. This is the way I think it's the approach for us in Dalarna, in Sweden anyway. Thank you.